everyone, this is PK Entertainment and we're back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be a non-spoiler review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Released on May the 5th, 2023, it stars Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Dave Bautista, Karen Gillan, Paul Clementimith, Vin Diesel, Bradley Cooper, Chakrudu Idushi, and it was directed by James Gunn. Now, there could be spoilers for all other movies and television shows within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so just beware when going into this overall video. Now, Volume 3 is overall the 32nd film within the MCU, and of course is the third and presumably final installment of the Guardians of the Galaxy, which concentrates on a misfit group of bounty hunters travelling space on various adventures. Guardians of the Galaxy, of course, was very much the underdog story of the MCU, the first movie surprising everybody and expectations, grossing over $773.3 million in 2014. The sequel, Volume 2, reached even greater heights, grossing $869 million in 2017, and very much establishing the Guardians as mainstream properties within entertainment and pop culture. Now, the third film will also mark director James Gunn's final involvement within Marvel before he moves over to Warner Brothers to start his new era for the DC Cinematic Universe. Now, in terms of the main story for Volume 3, we catch up with the Guardians in the Nowhere base, with the likes of Star-Lord, Nebula, Drax, Mantis, Rocket and Groot, all bickering and arguing and trying to get by as usual. But things change dramatically when a superpowered being known as Adam Warlock attacks the Guardians. In a furious encounter, he was of course the being that we saw created by the Sovereign race in the cocoon at the end credit scenes of Volume 2. Now a fully grown adult, he is sent to hunt the Guardians down. Now the Guardians manage to fend him off, but Rocket is severely injured in the process, and the Guardians have to set about a furious journey in space in very much a race against time to save his life. They come across the villainous High Evolutionary, who's obsessed in creating the perfect being and captures many different species for rigorous and very cruel amounts of experimentation. As we tap into Rocket's tragic backstory, the Guardians have to go all out to save their friend's life. So would Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 overall provide a conclusion and perhaps provide the greatest trilogy within the MCU? Now, overall, I would say it is a very good and sound entertaining comic book movie. It has for the most part the same tone and energy as the previous two films. We get the same banter and camaraderie between all of the characters. Plenty of soundtrack songs, probably a bit too much in my opinion, but we could say the same as the previous films as well. We have the same colours and pop and razzle and dazzle and effects and aesthetic and that weird outlandish cosmic flavour as before. Now, only this time, the movie does threaten to go for something far more impactful and certainly for something far more bold. And of course, this centres very much around Rocket's backstory, of which there are plenty of flashbacks all throughout the film. And it's in these elements that the film does go a lot more dark, a lot more sombre and a lot more dramatic. And a lot of these scenes, very impressively, really do hit the mark. There are certain times where you do think this is very much stretching the family-friendly boundaries within the MCU, but I didn't find these moments extremely graphic or gratuitous, but they will surprise and perhaps even leave the more family-friendly audience of the MCU a little bit shocked and a little bit startled and perhaps even a bit unsettled. I probably would go as far to say that you want to be a bit cautious if you do plan on taking your kids to watch this film. It's very much more about the emotions and the implications of what we see within Rocket's backstory. That is very much the opposite of the joyous tone that what we've associated from before. Now, personally, I didn't have much issues with these scenes, and I felt they were very good in very much expanding the character of Rocket Raccoon, whose backstory has been alluded to in a far more jovial way previously, but these scenes really had weight and pathos to them, and they didn't feel throwaway. They didn't feel like they were just there for sake or shock or being sensationalistic. They really felt important and integral to the overall story. And I think that's probably one of the best qualities about Volume 3 is that it gets the balance a lot better this time round between the action and the comedy, the drama and the humour. It knows when to have fun, but it also knows when to get serious, and I think this works very well for 2/3 of the movie. I also think where it improves on Volume 2 is that for the most part it keeps the characters together on the same path, whereas with Volume 2 we very much had everybody going on a separate journey. This time, everybody's kept together, so therefore the movie can move at much more of a straighter pace. And this is a good tactic in just keeping all of the characters involved and important within the main story. And when it comes to all of the cast, there's no real fault in any of their performances. All of them are really good in their roles now, and of course they've had plenty of movies now to become very familiar with the characters that they're playing. And the movie gives plenty of them chance to shine throughout this film. In particular, for me, the best standouts were Drax, Mantis and Nebula. They drew a lot of laughs within the cinema that I was watching, and I think the dynamic between all of the characters, it feels so natural now, and this also keeps you watching the movie even in the lesser parts because everybody is so likeable and watchable. If it's any character that feels underutilized, it's probably Adam Warlock. Now, this is nothing wrong with Will Poulter's performance, but he really is just a waste, especially if you are well versed within the comic book lore and you know of how important a role Adam Warlock played, especially in the Infinity Gauntlet of the comic books. But any potential is just wasted here. He's very much of a side character, and to be honest, you probably could have taken him out completely off the film and it would have been no worse off. So we then talk about Chukwudu Idoji's villain, the High Evolutionary, and ask the question as to whether he's one of the more improved villains within the MCU. Well, for me, he certainly had potential, and he starts off really strong, especially when we concentrate on Rocket's backstory. He definitely has a good presence and charisma, and it certainly comes across much more of an intelligent and methodical villain. He doesn't simply want to destroy the world, he wants to evolve beings and try and find the perfect combination of what makes the special individual. And this very much taps into the Rocket flashbacks. But unfortunately, as we come to the final third, the High Evolutionary becomes a bit over the top. We have too much shouting and ranting, and it just comes across as a bit cartoonish and very much one tone. And all of the good work building him up in the first two thirds kind of falls away, and it becomes very much of an afterthought towards the end of the film. And this is where I think Volume 3 just falls short of the hints of greatness that it certainly aspires to be. Unfortunately, we get that typical epic final third battle that happens so often within the Marvel movies now, with lots of explosions and monsters and spaceships and all of these cross-cutting fights and battles and CGI overload, and it goes on for a good 20 to 25 minutes. And really the film, and as so often, this really robs the movie of the more emotional and intense moments that it had before. It just becomes all too formulaic, and I do feel that what we really needed was a far more smaller scale character confrontation, very similar to what we got within Captain America Civil War. If you remember, 2/3 of the way through, we had the big epic set piece within the airport, and then we had a much more narrower, much more intimate face-off between both Captain America and Iron Man. And I think that's what we should have got with this film this time around. It almost feels that all of that build-up, studying Rocket Raccoon and the emotional weight and the gravitas that it does achieve to a certain point, is almost dealt away with, and we kind of go back to the more weaker installments of the MCU where everything just feels a bit more disposable and a bit more lifeless. And I would also say there's probably an overindulgence in the soundtrack. Again, there are probably 2 or 3 scenes where we could have done without playing the songs and just concentrated far more on the plot and the storyline. We get a few detours here and there, and you do kind of wonder where is this all going, but it's not overall enough to take away the overall enjoyment of the film. And this is really something that you could accuse all 3 movies within the Guardians trilogy of being about. So when we come on to the overall conclusion, and whilst for me it didn't quite make the impact as what I felt it should have done, I think overall it's satisfactory. It's a good way to end the Guardian story if it is indeed to be the case. Now, without spoiling it, I would say that they've probably left the door open for them to come back if need be. And I don't think it quite had the same impression as what we saw with Avengers Endgame, but I think overall you could walk away with it feeling that overall they did a good job in paying everybody service and certainly bringing a certain amount of closure to all of the characters involved. So if I had to give an overall score for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I would probably give it a 7.4 out of 10. It's definitely an improvement over Volume 2, and without question, it's the best movie probably since Avengers Endgame. It does surpass a lot of the Phase 4 installments. I'd probably say that the first film is still superior because I felt that got the balance even more right in terms of the characters and the storyline. But make no mistake about it, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is still a very fun, entertaining, and for the most part, very enjoyable and satisfactory installment. And one does hope that if Marvel can stay on this track, they can somehow reach close to the heights of what they saw within phases 1 to 3 and very much bounce back from the lower points, certainly of all the Disney Plus shows and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings, a non-spoiler review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I will shortly provide a more detailed spoiler review where I will go into far more depth as to the elements of the film that I thought worked really well and some parts that I felt just probably brought it a notch down from becoming a truly great comic book adventure and story that I think it very much intended to be. So look out for that review shortly in the future. And of course, I will cover the opening box office of the movie and comment on where it will leave Phase 5 going forward, and perhaps provide some commentary as well as to where the trilogy of the Guardians of the Galaxy stands in the overall hierarchy of comic book movies. So look out for all that content in the future. And if you have any other further suggestions regarding any other movies or television series or any other topics within the entertainment industry that you'd like to see me cover, then also let me know within the comments and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please consider hitting like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves and I will see you very, very soon.